Hello, everyone. My name is Flo van den Broek, and I'm a research fellow at Focal Europe. And today, my colleague Ebu Bekir Ijik and I are joined by Professor Ahmet Davutoğlu, who is the chairman of the Turkish Future Party. Mr. Davutoğlu, thank you so much for making time for us.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much again for accepting our request for this very precious interview for us. So, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me, I'll just kick off with the following. You used to be one of the key Turkish officials influencing not only Turkey's domestic politics, but also its foreign affairs for more than a decade, initially as the chief advisor to then Prime Minister, then as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and finally as Prime Minister. During your various terms within the government, Turkey was once an inspiration for Muslim majority countries, I remember very well. It was perhaps the only country in the world that was able to talk to both Palestinians and Israelis at the same time. The country was implementing a policy of zero problems with the neighboring countries. And I think more importantly, it was a respected member of Transatlantic Alliance. Mr. Chairman, may I ask you what has really happened to Turkey? Why are we talking about a very different Turkey today than the one of a decade ago, although the government is the very same government that made all the achievements that I have just mentioned?
Thank you very much, first of all, for this interview. Just a small correction. Yes, you are right. It is the same, it seems to be the same government. It is the same leader, but not the same government. When you check the list of the leading politicians in AK Party and also ministers of the current presidential cabinet, you can see it is very much different than the governments in the past. So many politicians and leading figures of AK Party and the government now are not in AK Party. So it is the same leader, yes, Erdogan, President Erdogan, but not the same government. If you just compare the cabinet today and the cabinet 10 years ago, even 6 years ago, you can see the difference. The leading politicians either were expelled or excluded, or they themselves resigned from AK Party. So it is difficult to say that it is the same government. The coalition partners today of AK Party is MHP, National Action Party, and Vatan Party of Perinçek and MHP from Bahçeli. They were the adversaries of AK Party 5-6 years ago. So this is just a small correction. What has changed? When we came to power in 2002, we had a vision. And the three legs of this vision is democratization of the government and establishing a democratic system based on human rights. And second leg was rational economic policies. And the third leg was multidimensional foreign policy. Yes, you are right. When I was Minister of Foreign Affairs and before as Chief Advisor and when I was Prime Minister, I was the mediator between Israel and Syria, between Israel and Palestinians, between Serbia and Bosnia, between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and several others, including Sudan and South Sudan, Somaliland and Somalia. So in several places, we had a very proactive, constructive foreign policy. The domestic democratization process was in full consistency with these approaches. Once you have a democratic system, rule of law, there is a trust to the economic system as well. There is a predictability of the system. And this democratization has strengthened economic policies, and economic rationality and progress have supported multidimensional foreign policy. Multidimensional foreign policy have supported both of these. This was the character of AK Party until my resignation in 2016. After my resignation, many leading visionary politicians of AK Party left AK Party, or they were excluded, they were peripheralized. What happened today? We have just the opposite trend. instead of democratization, there is an authoritization of the political system, especially after the constitutional reform. It is not reform, it is constitutional change in 2007. And there were these autocratic trend had some regional and global reflections as well. It is not surprising that when there was such a constitutional change based on a distorted presidential system, it is same month almost Trump came to power in the United States. And also after 2013 coup d'etat in Egypt and return of the autocratic dictatorial leaders or back to the system in Middle East, that had a misperception as if there is an autocratic trend in global and regional affairs. I tried to protect and keep Turkey distant from these regional and global trends through reforms when I was Prime Minister in 2016. Reform, transparency, law of transparency, political ethics, economic reforms, structural reforms, etc. And in fact, that was a split between me and President Erdogan, between the visionary approach in AK Party and new autocratic trends in AK Party. So therefore, there is such a change. That has changed. When we came to power in 2002, there was a famous slogan, Ebu Bekir may understand from Turkish, with 3Y, fighting against 3Y. I can say this 3Y is yasaklar, restriction. It might be said in English 3 Ps, prohibitions, restrictions, and political corruption, and poverty. But when now we have these 3 cases, whom against we fought are the basic characteristics of Turkish political system. Today there is a huge political corruption. You can observe these videos, etc. And there is a very autocratic, restrictive, prohibitive, political approach against freedom of press, freedom of thought, and there is a rising poverty. When I resigned in 2016, per capita income was $11,000 US. Now it is almost around $8,000 US. This is a huge poverty trend in the last 5 years. So the leader, the chairman of AK Party and leader of the AK Party is same, but the cadre division is totally different compared to AK Party in 2016 when I resigned and AK Party today.
Mr. Chairman, since you touched upon, following your controversial leave, I would say, from the governing AK Party through your resignation, you together with your supporters and colleagues formed a new party named the Future Party. May I ask you, what exactly does your party, Future Party, stand for? And do you really yourself believe that your party can really make a difference under the current circumstances facing Turkey, both internally and externally? And if I may also add one slight dimension, how do you see yourself, the post-Erdogan era in Turkey?
First of all, about my resignation, of course, there has been several comments about it, but it was basically because of the difference of principal differences on democracy, economic rationality, and multidimensional foreign policy, and fighting against corruption. So it was not a personal issue, as if some people are. It is not just an issue of leadership, whether Davutoğlu or Erdogan. No, it is a principal visionary difference. First of all, let me clarify this. After my resignation, 2016, 3 years, as member of AK Party, as member of the parliament in AK Party, and after 2018 as member of AK Party, I tried to warn President Erdogan. I submitted several reports to him regarding my concerns about the autocratic trends in the country, regarding my concerns on the judicial system, which lost the independence and trust of the people, and about my concerns nepotism, corruption, and also foreign policy issues. But when I realized that all these critics within the party, in AK Party, was not influential and it did not create any effect on the trends, on the negative trends in Turkey as a country and in AK Party, I raised my voice publicly, and they were very disturbed because of my public criticism against these trends, and they sent me to the disciplinary board of the party, and then I had to resign, and we established a new party. This party is not the continuity of AK Party, because from different perspectives. I want to emphasize why a new party, future party, and what are the basic principles? What are we trying to achieve? If you establish a new party, basically three things are important. One is your vision. What is your vision? The other one is human capacity. Who are the founders of the party? And what is about the public support of organizational structure? Let me clarify, based on 6 basic principles of our party, which differs from other parties, not only from AK Party, but from other parties as well, even from the parties in the past. First of all, about the philosophy, political philosophy. Recently, I wrote a book last year, published by Cambridge University Press, Systemic Earthquake and World Order, Inclusive Democracy versus Exclusive Populism. The basic political philosophy of our party is inclusivity. In last 100 years of Turkish, almost 100 years of Turkish Republic, there have been several political flashpoints or critical thresholds, like ethnic issues between Turks and Kurds, like sectarian issues between Sunnis and Alawites, and lifestyle or ideological issues between secularists and conservatives. What we are trying to do in our party first is that to create an inclusive approach to bring all these segments of the society in the same political umbrella. Therefore, I am proud of our founders of the party that not as the chairman of the party, as a political scientist, I can say that this is the most inclusive party of Turkish democracy in the last 70 years. Why? Not only these different segments of society, but the leading Christian personalities, an Armenian, a Greek, and an Assyrian businessmen, intellectuals, they became founders of the party. We have all the leading former politicians from different political segments are in the party. This inclusivity for us is needed for Turkey today to prevent polarization, to prevent political tension, and to have a common destiny of democracy in the country. Second important principle is democracy based on human dignity. The first paragraph, the first sentence of our party program is human dignity. Human dignity is the basis of our political approach, political principles as the party, and this human dignity is achieved only if there is a full-scale, comprehensive, inclusive democracy. So what we say is that today Turkey needs a constitutional reform and based on inclusive democracy. Not just democracy, I am saying inclusive democracy. Not participatory democracy only, but inclusive participatory democracy. Not representative democracy, just to make an election and to accept the decision of the voters. This is a stage of democracy. We want to have an inclusive participatory democracy, and we believe that there is a need of revival of human rights and a constitutional reform. Parallel to this, rule of law. Today, one of the main failures of politics in Turkey today is trust to rule of law. So human dignity, human rights, rule of law, democracy. This is our approach. And in this sense, our program, you can check, is intellectually the best framework of this approach. Third is there is a need of an economic reform, not just economic action plan. After this distortion and poverty of the economic institutions, including central bank, including relations between private and public sector, etc. What we need today is not just an economic program. We need an economic reform, because there is a need of restructuring economic institutions. There is a need of to establish trust in the markets, and today we are facing stagnation, stagflation, unemployment, stagnation, and inflation are together with the decline, of Turkey, the value of Turkish lira. Against these macroeconomic imbalances and microeconomic problems of citizens, customers, we need to have an economic reform. Therefore, last year we declared a new economic model for future economic model. We see referring to the party name Future. So this is the third aspect. Fourth, in order to achieve this, there is a need of transparency, clean politics. We last year, again this year, we declared a strategic plan for clean politics, 165 steps to fight against corruption. Corruption is not just an ethical problem. Corruption is wasting the energy, the resources of the country. So therefore, that was one of the reasons of my split from AK Party. So our party is aiming to have a new, transparent, accountable approach. This is the relation of economics and law. This is a clear approach, and based on the universal criteria, Greco principles and all the other European principles as well will be taking care of these from the different perspective. Fifth is an institutional recovery is needed. Today, state institutions, both economic institutions, security institutions, parliamentary institutions, they had lost credibility in the eyes of the people. And institutional reform is needed. For us, meritocracy and democracy should be together, like a combined source of synergy and energy. So to create meritocracy, we will restructure Turkish institutions based on democratic principles, and this will mobilize manpower. Today, unfortunately, the principle of the existing government, President Erdogan and AK Party, is nepotism rather than meritocracy. The relatives of the politicians and the close circles of certain political segments are running the country. The governor of the central bank doesn't have any background in central bank. In many institutions is the same. In fact, that was the basic difference of opinion and methodological difference between me and President Erdogan. For me, as an academician, as an intellectual, the most important value is quality, quality, quality. I don't care who is my relative, my member of my party or other. Meritocracy and the quality of bureaucracy is a must for state, and there is a need of an institutional reform. This is important. The last, not that least, is multidimensional foreign policy, opening Turkey to the world. Autocratic regime systems, usually they prefer to have an inward-looking society, defining internal and external threats. When we came to power, as you rightly referred to my concept, zero problems with our neighbors, I tried to make a psychological shift, because in Turkish psyche, all the neighbors were seen as threats, and there were external threats, internal threats. I tried to show to the people that Syria is not a threat. Russia is not a threat. Greece or Iran or others. We need to have a constructive, proactive foreign policy. And we achieved a lot when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, Prime Minister. We achieved a lot, having excellent relations with US, with EU, and with Russia and China at the same time. We had excellent relations with Egypt and Iran at the same time, and several other examples of with Serbia and Bosnia at the same time. Now, unfortunately, this government is following a rhetorical foreign policy, not strategic foreign policy. Rhetorical foreign policy means whenever you need a rhetoric to mobilize masses in the country, you escalate the tension. Whenever there is a pressure from outside, you de-escalate the tension. This is not a foreign policy approach. Our foreign policy approach is constructive, proactive, visionary foreign policy. Therefore, when you check my speeches to the ambassadors of Turkey when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was always saying humanitarian foreign policy, constructive foreign policy. So today, Turkey should be open to everywhere. Turkey should have excellent relations with all the global powers and good relations with the neighbors. And internal domestic reforms should be supported with an understanding of Turkey open to the world. The existing government, they tried to create a political atmosphere of inward looking, making propaganda to the masses, what we call in Turkish, Türk'ün Türkiye propagandası, means propaganda of Turks to Turks. This is not the way I approach. We have to make Turkey open to the world. We have to make Turkish citizens traveling all over the world easily. Therefore, I always supported visa liberalization policies with EU and with other countries. Turkey open to human dignity, open to the world, open to democracy. That's what we want to achieve. This is the philosophy of basic principles of philosophy of future party. And this is different, not only from from AK Party, but different to many other political parties in Turkey.
Now, something else, Mr. Davutoğlu, although you are recognized as a distinguished academic and a former Turkish official here in the Brussels bubble, your former colleagues from the governing AK Party hold you responsible for the millions of refugees that went from Syria to neighboring countries, to Turkey, Europe, and even beyond. Could you tell us, do you have a role in this Syrian refugee issue, which also challenged politics in Europe, where many major political parties at the center of the political spectrum have been facing existential threats?
First of all, again, let me clarify I don't know who the former colleagues are, but blaming on me on Syrian refugee issues. But yeah, I can say, knowing the history and political psychology, I can tell you, whenever someone resigns, it is the easiest way to blame on him if you stay back in power. So for those who have taken power from me against the basic principles of democracy through some sort of coup d'etat in the party in 2016, of course, the easiest way for them is to blame on me. And there was a press embargo against me. Still, there is a press embargo against me. I was not able to defend myself, and I didn't want to defend because people know no national or international issue should be just understood blaming on one actor. Let me ask a clear question. Who is responsible for Syrian refugee issue from Syria? Again, as a political scientist and an observer, I am saying, first, Syrian regime is responsible. Not Turkey, not EU, not other countries, not any political leader. Why? Because Syrian regime, despite of all of our best efforts, myself as Minister of Foreign Affairs visited Syria more than 50 times, just to help Syrian people. Syrian regime used chemical weapons against its own people. Syrian regime used barrel bombs. Syrian regime attacked to the cities by air force. So those Syrians left Syria not because of invitation from Turkey, but they had to leave Syria because if they stayed in their towns or houses, they would have been killed. This is the main reason why Syrian refugee crisis emerged. Who is the second responsible? Let me openly say, second responsibility is on the shoulder of UN Security Council. For several years, UN Security Council and 5 permanent members of the council just watched the humanitarian crisis in Syria. Around 1 million people were killed. Several million people had to escape to other countries, and there is also an issue of domestic refugees inside Syria. So one of the biggest tragedies in the last 100 years occurred in Syria, and UN Security Council members were not able to take any serious implementable decision for refugees. So nobody can blame on Turkey. Nobody can blame on Jordan or Iraq or Lebanon as neighboring countries and other leaders. Bashar al-Assad, his regime, and UN Security Council is responsible for this crisis. Who paid the price of this irresponsible attitude of regime and international community? First, Turkey pays the price, regardless of the personalities. It is not Erdogan, Davutoğlu, or any other political leader or party. Turkey as a country had to pay the price. Secondly, neighboring countries had to pay the price. Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. Okay, if I am responsible, assume that I am responsible for this. Who is responsible in Jordan? Millions of refugees went to Jordan or Lebanon. So it is not an issue of Turkish domestic policy. Third, EU had to pay the price because the main route of refugees was Turkey and EU. Now, when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, yes, based on basic human rights and basic universal values, I said that Turkey will accept refugees from Syria. I am a human being. I have seen Syrian refugees, lost Syrian children who lost their families, their fathers, their mothers, Syrian young girls amputated their legs. How could any human being be acting based on realpolitik if they have a conscious, human conscience? So Turkey, myself, and not only myself, all Turkish decision-making process. A foreign minister cannot decide for everything. I can decide for diplomacy, but Syrian refugee issue is a security issue. Syrian refugee issue is not just a matter of diplomacy, but it's a matter of domestic Minister of Interior, Domestic Affairs, security issues. It's a full-scale problem. So we try to absorb this refugee issue inside Turkey. But when it became not only thousands, tens of thousands, of hundreds of millions, naturally it became a global crisis, a crisis in Europe. What did I try to do when I became Prime Minister and when the refugee crisis had escalated? I made one very constructive, successful diplomacy negotiation with EU leaders, including Angela Merkel and many other leaders. At that time, President Holland from France and Rutte, Prime Minister Rutte from Holland and many other leaders. We accepted an agreement 15th of March, 2016. It was a great success. Why? Because it achieved 3 important objectives at the same time. The first objective of this agreement was an urgent action solution, an urgent solution for irregular refugees in Aegean Sea. You know, the dead bodies of the children disturb all of our the human conscience everywhere in the world. So with that agreement, we prevented irregular refugee flow. Second important achievement was creating a common approach between Turkey and EU regarding long-term refugee issue. And we accept, your EU has accepted to accept regular refugees from Turkey as a complementary part of the irregular refugees, acceptance of irregular refugees by Turkey. So a fund, 6 billion euro money is secondary importance, but important was at that time to create a common approach between Turkey and EU, and it was a success. Third is restructuring Turkish-EU relations. I can come to this point later in details, but with that agreement, visa liberalization and readmission agreement was accepted synchronically and together, and custom union framework, custom union, revision of custom union, opening new chapters, having EU-Turkey summits, annual EU-Turkey summits. These were a new package of Turkey-EU relations. So refugee issue will continue to be a fact, not only regarding Syria, but if there is such a global injustice of income from Africa, from Latin America to US, from Africa to Europe, from neighboring countries to Turkey, and everywhere, today the problem of humanity is global injustice of income. And again, international community, Turkey, EU, and all the concerned parties of refugees should come together around the table to work together based on the basic principles of human rights. This is basically what should be achieved. Regarding Syrian refugees in the future, what will be happening to Syrian refugees? For Syrian refugees to go back to their homeland, there is a need of a new Syria. Based on UN Security Council Resolution 2014, there is a need of a new Syrian transitional government in Syria should be established, and UN Security Council resolution should be adopted, implemented. A new Syria should emerge, where all the parties, all the sectarian, religious, ethnic groups are part of it. That will be the ultimate solution for Syrian refugee crisis. If Bashar Assad continues to stay as today, and if the instabilities and presence of several militia groups are on the ground, it is difficult to convince Syrian people to go back to their country. There is an need of an international effort to establish a new process of transition in Syria.
You were speaking of this particular challenge facing Europe, but with regard to Turkey, what would you see as the three most pressing domestic and foreign policy challenges? And why do you think they are the most pressing ones?
In fact, I answered this question partially when I tried to explain the philosophy of our party. But if you ask me to specify three most important questions, the first one is human rights and freedom of thought, freedom of press, democratization. This is the first important challenge, because if there is no freedom of thought, if there is no freedom of press, you cannot even to talk about the issues and the concerns about the critical issues in the country. So there is a need of the basic concept here is trust and inclusivity. So this is the first problem, human rights and democratic values, the first issue. Secondly, economic, to prevent economic poverty. There is a huge, I am in Anatolia in several cities with the people. Every month I am visiting at least 10 cities in the country. There's a huge povertization in the masses. So there is a need of a new economic reform package, a comprehensive economic reform package against stagflation, against unjust income distribution, and achieving a productive economy. Today, this is the second big issue. The third one is institutional revival. Institutional revival, institutional revival. Institutions are collapsing. And economic, political, cultural institutions, traditions are collapsing. These are the three big challenges: human rights, economic recovery, and institutional revival.
Mr. Davutoğlu, a lot has been talked both here in Brussels and as well as in Turkey about why the EU-Turkey relations is where it is at the moment. And under the current stalemate, what do you think is the most realistic approach to Turkey's EU relations? In other words, don't you think that what we need is really a paradigm shift to navigate Turkey's relations with the EU to maybe a different direction that is no longer, I would say, embedded in the accession negotiations? What is your take on that?
First of all, before going into details of negotiation process, that's important. But what we need today between Turkey and EU is a long-term strategic vision for both sides. I will be very frank in this sense. Where EU is created by visionary leaders in the most difficult times of history after Second World War. It was a long-term process. And it was achieved as a union in 1990s after a process of almost 40, 50 years. And it was product of a visionary approach. Today, EU needs such a revival of strategic thinking. And EU leaders should approach Turkish-EU relations from this perspective. I will come on what basis. Same thing is valid for Turkey. Turkey needs a strategic vision. Regarding the Turkish position in international affairs and what means EU in this strategic position. Unfortunately today, neither in Turkey, in Ankara, nor in Brussels, we have this type of visionary approach. In last 20 years, I have seen many European leaders. I work with them. When did we achieve a success? Whenever we had a mutual strategic vision acting together. But today, instead of a common strategic vision, there are suspicions in the minds of leaders in Brussels and in Ankara. Eurosceptics in Turkey and Turco-skeptics in Europe, they are working hand in hand to prevent any new attempt in Turkish-EU relations. It means supporters of EU in Turkey and supporters of Turkey in EU, they should come together and have a new vision. What is the basis of this new vision? The world is changing every day, not every year, every decade. Every day there is a changing atmosphere in the world. After pandemics, many things have changed. So is there any such evaluation of EU in the world affair? I don't see that. Is there such a re-evaluation of Turkish position in this changing world? I don't see that as well in Ankara. What's it? Everybody now observes in Ankara, in Europe, everywhere, the new revival between US and China. Everybody's talking on the changing character of supply chain after the pandemics and after the rise of Chinese power. But what is the solution? The solution for me is very clear in my mind for EU and Turkey. In my book, Strategic Debt, in 1999, I wrote that 19th century was a European century. 20th century was basically Atlantic century, US century, and 21st century, in the first half, will be Asian century, second half, African century. It doesn't mean that EU will lose importance. No, the issues will shift. Today, a new alliance in Pacific is affecting Europe. It is directly related with Brexit. So nothing is isolated in the world. What is it? What is the basic character of Turkey is a central country in Afro-Eurasia, the mainland of humanity. Turkey is right at the center. What is the European significance of all these balances is democratic values, human rights. And today, democratic values is under pressure by the rise of autocratic regimes, and Europe in general is losing the strategic competitive power between US and rising Asian powers, China and Russia. Turkish-EU relation is a key in this changing world. I don't mean that Turkey should be part of a new Cold War against any country, no. Why EU is important for us? One, democratic values, a common historical background. Second, economic relations. Today, the main economic partners of Turkish companies, Turkish state is in Europe, not in anywhere else. And third, multidimensional foreign policy. Without EU, Turkey cannot have democratization process successfully. Without EU, we cannot have economic recovery because of our imports, basically export markets are in EU and custom union. And without EU, Turkey cannot have multidimensional foreign policy. EU for us is important not to counterbalance US or Russia or China, no. But I was criticized in 2004 when President Putin visited Turkey just before the Copenhagen summit in December 2004, when the date of negotiation was decided for Turkey. But I told everywhere, Turkey is part of Europe, but a neighbor of Russia. These are like two wings. Similarly, Atlantic relations and Euro-Asian background of Turkey is like two wings. It should be balanced. And ignoring EU and making reference to Russia and China only is a mistake. But ignoring Russia and China and other powers and making just reference to Atlantic, why we were a respectable member of Atlantic, as you said, Atlantic Pact, because all the allies in NATO knew that Turkey can contribute to international stability, regional stability. In Afghanistan, no country could replace Turkish role, or in Africa, or in the Middle East. It depends how you approach. So from these three perspectives, we need EU. And EU need us, again, from three perspectives. One is EU today, if have an international strategic position, should have a stand regarding EU in NATO as an alliance, and EU in Euro-Asia as part of Euro-Asian system. This is big challenge. Therefore, British Brexit was in fact as a result of this dilemma. Now, EU has to reposition itself in international affairs. Otherwise, we lose strategic power. The solution in this international positioning is Turkey. The EU can have a new rising power in international affairs, either relations with Russia or relations with Turkey. But because of the institutional background, relations with Turkey is much more easier. There are so many mechanisms together, and there are millions of Turks living in Europe. Secondly, economic future of Europe. Everybody knows that China is rising. Competitive power of China is important. It should be taken care, should be well understood. What is, especially after pandemics, supply chain? And Turkey is the biggest industrial production center in all Afro-Eurasia. If you have a line, Germany, France, Italy in the west, and Japan, Korea, and China in the east, all in the rest of Afro-Eurasia, Turkey is the biggest industrial power. Infrastructure, manpower. Despite of economic crisis in Turkey, Turkey is the best solution, the most optimum solution of supply chain for EU. And third, EU has to work with Turkey if EU want to have a stable neighboring zones in North Africa, in Balkans, in Caucasia, Central Asia, Eurasia. Without Turkish contribution, or if EU and Turkey are acting against each other, both sides will lose in all these regions. Therefore, I am following very closely what's happening in Libya. It was a missing point if recently in Paris, France, Italy, and Germany organized a summit for the future of Libyan elections in December, but Turkish minister even was not there. Nobody can ignore Turkey in Libya, in North Africa, or in the Middle East. If you ignore, you will lose. Same, if Turkey ignores EU in Mediterranean politics, Turkey will lose. Also, it is alarming that France, Greek Cypriots, Greece, and Egypt, ministers of foreign affairs met in Athens last week. There is no need such a policy of containment against Turkey. It is biggest mistake of EU if EU tries to contain Turkey in Eastern Mediterranean. This is not the way of Turkish EU foreign policy approach. Similarly, Turkey should not have anti-EU stand in Mediterranean. What we need is a rational diplomacy, sitting together, talking together, developing strategic vision together, and most important, not acting against each other, but acting together for the same common interest. So in short, what we need is a new long-term strategic vision in Brussels and in Ankara. And I am sure if we come to power, we will revive Turkish-EU relations. And if I continued stayed in power in 2016, based on this agreement between Turkey and EU, today Turkish-EU relations would have been very much different in positive sense. Many European leaders still I have contact, they accept this fact. In fact, those who acted against me in 2016, forcing me to resign, one of the reason was transparency, political ethics law, etc., democratization process. Another aspect was to prevent revival of Turkish-EU relations based on institutional framework. But there will be a change in Turkey. I can assure you. The new future party will be leading in this new Turkey. And Turkey will be, again, a constructive, proactive foreign policy actor, having good relations in NATO, with Atlantics, with EU, with Russia, with China, being influential in different regions around for the stability of the region, and also controlling economic crisis and reviving Turkish economy as a competitive economy everywhere in the world. That is what we want to achieve.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. We have one additional question. It's up to you. I mean, it's about your relations with the Nation Alliance. If you allow us, we will ask. Otherwise, we will end. We know you're vivid. We can imagine your vivid schedule. So several partner organizations really force us literally to ask this question to you.
Okay, you can ask. In my political career, everybody knows, all the press knows that I never ask them, put on them any limitation on questions. You can ask any question.
Sure. Well, you are already in a regular and intense contact with the oppositional Nation Alliance on many key issues, including the request to get back to parliamentary system and so on and so forth. May I ask you which precise circumstances are restraining you and your party from officially announcing now that you will support the Nation Alliance in the upcoming parliamentary and presidential elections?
Thank you. First of all, let me make a short correction again. Our party is the first party in Turkey providing an alternative model for parliamentary system in Turkey. Last year, November, we declared as a full package of this constitutional reform. But we never said that we will go back. You said going back to the parliamentary system. No, we will not go back to the distorted parliamentary system in the past. Before, in Turkey, there was a distorted parliamentary system. All the responsibilities were on the shoulder of Prime Minister, but the power was in the hand of President. And now we have a distorted presidential system. So from distorted parliamentary system, we shift to distorted presidential system. What we will do, we will establish a real functioning parliamentary system, full-scale parliamentary system. About the alliances in Turkey, when we established the party, we said we will end Cold War politics in Turkey. 2 alliances. This new distorted presidential system forced political parties to establish alliances before the election. But basically, this is election alliances rather than running the country together. At this moment, we established our party. We are developing, we are submitting new models on economics, parliamentary system, judicial reform to the people, to the public. And we are sharing this with all the parties, especially with the opposition parties. Our relations with other parties, we classified in 3 parts. One is dialogue. For us, there is no limitation on dialogue. We can meet with any leader, any party, because at the end of the day, politics is an art of making negotiation and dialogue. Second, cooperation. Cooperation should based on principles. What I identified the principles of our party in your second question or third question. In that sense, we have close relation with all the partners of Nations Alliance. Republican People Party, Good Party, Saadet Party, all the others. We have excellent relations. We have regular meetings. We have several consultative mechanisms, including 6 parties came together to talk in details on parliamentary system. This is a cooperation based on principles, issue-based cooperation. But being an alliance, a member of alliance, is meaningful only, partner of alliance, is meaningful only before the election. Not right. And even the Cumhur İttifak, what they call, it is not permanent. Recently, Bahçeli, the leader of National Action Party, declared that they are part of the Cumhur Alliance, but they are not part of the government. So he had to make a difference because he doesn't want to be blamed by the wrong policies of the government. So Turkish politics is very dynamic. In coming weeks and months, you will see many other new developments in Turkish politics. But with the leading opposition parties, we have a common approach. We will see what will be the new election law. We will see what will be the new dynamics of Turkish politics, and we will decide accordingly. But we will never make any alliance or cooperation with autocratic trends, autocratic, parties or approaches.
Mr. Davutoğlu, thank you so much for dedicating your time to us, and also for this insightful exchange. It was really interesting, and it was a pleasure to have you as a guest here at Focal Europe.